well, say what you will about it, it's still better than the Eddie Murphy version. Alright, hey everybody, back with the next batch of reviews. Again, thank you for your patience with the gap between these review sections. Still trying to learn how to be consistent about it, but anyway, we're back to the next 4 movies I'm going to talk about. Starting with one I saw a few weeks ago with a second attempt of making, I guess third technically, of making a Haunted Mansion movie happen. Now this came out, I want to say before Barbie, I think, even. And it kind of received mixed reviews, and those mixed reviews are pretty warranted. It is kind of a mixed bag of a film. A lot of people have really shitting on this thing, and while a lot of it's justified, I'm not going to write this movie off completely, and it's for a very specific reason. And a lot of the reason comes down to it does one thing pretty well, better than anything in the rest of the movie, and I feel like when we lean into it more, it would have been actually a pretty decent film overall. As it's kind of a mixed bag. It's trying to juggle a lot of things. It doesn't succeed in all of it necessarily, and it doesn't quite have a strong enough heart to carry it all the way through. It still has a heart. It still has a decent one. There's a good point trying to be made here. It just kind of gets lost in the weeds of the spectacle and the showiness and the actual aspects of the ride. So let's break this down quickly by plot, in case if you didn't see this or you know anything about it, or even this movie was even made. Let me break it down really quick. And I made sure to pull the IMDb page first this time, so that way I didn't need to vamp while I pulled it up. This movie is about a character named Ben Matthews, who is played by Lakeith Stanfield, who is a phenomenal actor from Sorry to Bother You, which is quickly becoming my favorite films. Who started out as this I forget some engineer or scientist or something like that, who ends up he ends up together with this woman who believes in the occult and kind of led these tours around New Orleans that discuss hauntings and stuff like that. And then, of course, later on, she passed away. He kind of ends up inheriting this tour guide and letting his scientific career behind out of grief and despair, and is feeling directionless in life. While this is happening, Rosario Dawson, who plays Gabby, moves into the aforementioned haunted house with her son, who also is dealing with the loss of her husband and his dad. They find out very quickly that things in the house are fucked up, but they also realize by what is admittedly a good idea choice, are also kind of stuck with it. So eventually they end up bringing in a bunch of people to kind of help deal with the issue. All of them kind of fail spectacularly, but now that they've also been inside the house, they are also kind of stuck with it, because whenever they try to leave the mansion, the ghosts kind of follow them wherever they're at and haunt them until they come back. So in the spirit of that, Owen Wilson plays a priest who recruits named Father Kent, who specifically recruits Ben Matthews because he allegedly has a camera that can allegedly take pictures of ghosts, using some kind of ghost particle detector thingy, whatever. And along the way, they realize very quickly, the place actually is haunted. Everyone's kind of in deep shit. So they recruit other people in there, including Danny DeVito as Bruce Davis, who is also the person knows all the history behind the mansion, and Tiffany Haddish, or Haddish, I don't know how to say her name, who also plays a psychic, basically. I forget why they recruited her, but she's in there too. And together, the 4 of them, 5 of them, must figure out why the mansion is haunted, how to alleviate the curse, and what exactly the ghosts actually want. So that's the movie in the broad strokes. And as it exists, it is kind of just spectacle over substance. There's a lot of quippage going around, which I usually don't have a problem with, but it's not really balanced well with the other elements of the film. Jared Leto's also in there as the main villain of the piece. He plays the Hatbox Ghost, who ends up being the main villain of the piece. And a lot of people pointing this out, and I agree with it. I don't know why it had to be Jared Leto, because they modify his voice so much, and there's so much CGI and makeup, and I don't even think it's makeup. It's so much CGI plastered over him. There's no reason to be Jared Leto. There's no reason to keep giving Jared Leto jobs, and I don't understand why this proven groomer and cult leader still keeps getting work in Hollywood. Is he a name that brings in people? Do people like Jared Leto for some reason? I don't know. But he's also in this movie, even though unless you see the name beforehand, you could never tell it was him. So I don't really get the point behind that. Now, like I said, on the whole, the movie's just kind of but it does capture one piece that I did really like, and that's on the topic of grief itself, and loss, and how you cope with those kind of things. I know this is kind of a point I've harped on a lot this year, because, again, I have not been shy about my own issues with grief over last year. I'm going to try not to regurgitate again here, because I feel like it's been redundant at this point. If you've watched a lot of my videos I've released over the past year or so, you know what's been going on. But either way, it does capture a very specific kind of tension, and I think a lot of that has to do with Lakeith Stanfield's performance in the movie, because even though the material itself isn't necessarily the best work, he still sells the shit out of it. He is still giving he's still giving everything he's got, and he sells it. He really sells this idea of just kind of a broken, grief-stricken man trying to find his way forward. Through his own pain. And I feel like that's where ghosts become important in popular culture, in storytelling. That's what ghosts are supposed to be. They're supposed to represent the past that you can't let go of. That's what ghosts inherently are. That's what the narrative purpose they usually serve, or supposed to serve. And this movie feels like it started out trying to capitalize on that more. It feels like that's what this movie wanted to be. And I can tell that because there are a few key moments in the movie where, especially with Stanfield, who talks about his wife and how he passed away and how he fell in love with her. And it's this big, long story and how he's really struggled to move on through that and how he doesn't want to move on from it because it feels like you're kind of letting go of her in the process. It's a really effective scene. And it carries that kind of tension and grief that you expect with something like that. One scene in particular, it's about halfway through the movie, has... Lakeith Stanfield sitting in this chair, and he's kind of going over the story of his wife and how they met and how they proposed, and how they got married and how she eventually died. And it's a really sad scene. He's Stanfield is selling the hell out of it, and this scene captures a very unique kind of tension that is extremely hard to describe if you haven't been in that kind of situation. Where after he tells his big long story, and he's clearly very upset. He's grieving. He's he has that look like no matter how many times you talk about it or deal with it or how long it's been, every time you talk about it, you still it still feels like it just happened. It still feels fresh. It still feels new. And I feel like Stanfield does a really good job of capturing just what that even looks like. But even after he gets all this long story, I forget what the exact joke was, but Danny DeVito makes a comment about her cholesterol or something like that. Because throughout the entire story, he mentions how she liked, cheese balls or something like that. It was some kind of high cholesterol food. And everyone kind of laughs, and Luke, I will remember his name one day. Lakeith Stanfield starts laughing with it too, and it's a unique kind of laugh. It's a unique kind of laugh because it's one you didn't know you need when you're in that moment of grief. It's something that just unexpectedly cuts the tension, and you can find that even with this pain and these memories that just bring a lot of sorrow to you, that there's still levity to be found. There's still moments of joy that can still be taken from it, even though there is an undercurrent of pain under all of it. And that's a real thing, and that's something that's it's hard to kind of capture on film. And I feel like there are elements of that in this movie, and I wish it took a stronger piece of the narrative. And The Son, too, similarly also has some good scenes, especially towards the end. Spoiler alert. Where, he's grieving his father, and he's, trying to find his own way to move on. He's kind of life's not the same. I don't enjoy things anymore. I don't get along with the kids. I want things to go back to the way they were before all you're left with is just this misery. And he has this great conversation with Stanfield where he just kind of briefly mentions stay here, we could be miserable together. which sounds like, I don't know, like a hollow line, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's a reality to that. There is like a genuine comfort in knowing someone who can understand that very unique level of grief. And then all that's kind of lost in stupid bullshit after that. That's really what it boils down to. Is like those little moments where they're talking about loss and pain and just dealing with all of that are like really well done and really wonderful. But then it gets muddled with a lot of the ghost shit or a lot of the shenanigans shit, and like Tiffany Haddish doing whatever the fuck she does in every movie. And like Owen Wilson, who I enjoyed well enough. Like, I get his purpose in the narrative. Also, just kind of just hamming it up, and that was fine. Tiffany Haddish is way worse. Danny DeVito. Love Danny DeVito. He's a delight wherever he shows up. But then I also has, like, Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays, like, Madame Leota, who is weirdly phoning it in, like, which is kind of surprising for Jamie Lee Curtis, because, like, I don't know what she's going for. I don't know what she's doing, but I kind of miss Jennifer Tilly, which is not a great endorsement. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really the big reason I still want to even talk about this movie, is just talk about the fact that there is there's a kernel of a good idea of how to make a movie about the Haunted Mansion here. And a lot of the visuals are cool. It was kind of cool to see all the Easter egg stuff from the ride, because the Haunted Mansion was always my favorite Disneyland ride when I was a kid. Granted, I haven't been to Disneyland in like 14 years. But I remember, like, that was always a ride I had to go to every year. That was always my favorite. So I got a lot of seeing a lot of those, like, Easter eggs and references and stuff like that was pretty cool. It just gets bogged down by a kind of needlessly, I don't want to say convoluted plot, but just one that just feels like it distracts from the part of the story, parts of the movie that feel important. And granted, again, it's a kid's movie at the end of the day. It is one that's based on a ride. I don't have high expectations for major drama or anything like that. But it's just one of those things that it does feel like wasted potential. And I'm curious what earlier drafts of this film looked like, because I'm willing to bet it probably dived more into those aspects that I liked. But granted, for what it is, I think it's like, it's mediocre. It's like a 5 out of 10 if I had to put a number to it. Just pretty average. A couple good scenes in there, but definitely nothing I ever intend to see again. So yeah, Haunted Mansion, it's bleh, but there are some parts in here that I wish were expanded on more. And I do think it's so close to touching on something really real. And I wish it went more to the direction of serving what ghosts are traditionally meant to represent in a fictional narrative. So yeah, I think that's all I have on Haunted Mansion. I have 3 other movies to talk about tonight, so let's get on with it. See you guys in the next one.